The last episode of the year. Welcome to Magna Meets, and what an episode we have for you today. We can't believe the guests that we have managed to bring onto this episode. When the idea was first floated, the team at Magna thought I was crazy, but the more we spoke about it, the more it made sense. Why on earth would we invite our direct competitors? They're all operators that I have a lot of respect for, all very individual and unique in their own rights. Some working specifically with grassroots footballers, some with offices in Dubai, and others who work as a master agent. Let's face it, talking about new builds is like farting in the library. We'll address some misconceptions and talk about what it's like working in such a high stakes industry. Guys, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for agreeing to come on today.
Thanks for having us.
If we can go around and introduce where you're from, what it is you do, that'd be great.
So I'm Toby Mancuso, Director of Track Capital. So we're a property company that operates in the off-plan and new build market, where we sell investment opportunities both in the UK and Dubai to our investor clients, again based in the UK and also overseas. Offices here in London, Dubai and Hong Kong. And we're just a ambitious, hungry company looking to provide good results and opportunities for our clients.
Amazing.
Mike Holliday, one of the directors of residential estates. So we are a property investment company up in Chester, so much further north than you guys. And we specialise in investment property, but not just selling property, but managing property also. So we've been going for just over 30 years now. And originally we were a traditional sales and lettings company in Chester. And then when I joined the company 10 years ago, we started to bring in property investments. So and in the last few years, we've started to package the whole thing together. So the idea for our investors is if they get the full cycle, if you like. So we source properties that we want to manage for them. We manage those properties for them. And there's an exit strategy as well if they did want to offload them.
My name's Stuart Williams. I run a company called Thirlmere Deacon. I'm the founder and CEO. We've been running Thirlmere Deacon for over 6 years now. But myself, I've been in property for over 2 decades. Wow. And there's no such thing as experience, is what they say, isn't it? So I've started in property because I lived abroad, lived in Hong Kong and China, and came back and wanted to build a property portfolio, but had no idea how to start, no idea how to buy a property from early 20s. So for my sins, I became an estate agent to learn from the inside out, and done that. And for a couple of years, got my own branch, went into investment after that. It's a natural progression, isn't it? And then worked for, I think, one of the biggest in the business, and came back from a bit of a sabbatical and set up Thirlmere Deacon to run under my values, really, from everything that I've learned with the network that I've built. And
you've got an interesting past. You've got a sports related past.
Well, my sabbatical I mentioned there, I went off to race on a snowboard for GB. So I was on the GB team representing Great Britain across Europe. My goal was to get the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics. Okay. You've got to be in my discipline, which is snowboard cross, which is like motocross type thing. Snowboard cross racing, you've got to be top 64 in the world. So although I finished that season in the top 10 UK, in the world, I ranked something like 497th.
Wow.
So,
which is still impressive.
Just missed it.
For the world.
Missed it.
Yeah.
497th. Yeah, but I didn't get where I wanted to go. So back to London, tail between my legs, but with an idea and a dream to build a property portfolio and an empire, let's say.
Great. How did you guys end up in property?
Well, I'd say I kind of stumbled into it, really. If I'm being honest, I didn't sort of choose it. I was fresh out of university. So as I say, I've been in the industry 10 years now. When I first joined the company, it was in the marketing side of the business. But I think I sort of fast realised that it was for me. I really sort of enjoyed the kind of entrepreneurial side of it, that generating a second sort of passive income. Bit of background on myself. So I grew up on my parents' dairy farm up in Cumbria, so completely different to this type of thing. But the reason I mention that is, working hard and getting a passive income is something I've always done, right from when I was young. So, I was selling eggs to the village when I was younger. Nice. I was selling sweets, CDs at schools. I've always liked to have a secondary form of income. And, why I mentioned that with properties, I think it's properties kind of on like that, but on a bigger scale. These are people who, work a 9 to 5 doing their jobs, but they want that secondary form of income on it. So I love it. I'm sure Toby and yourself are the same. You enjoy that buzz of getting a sale, and but genuinely you like to see investors making good incomes from the properties that you're advising them to buy.
When you stem it back and strip it back, we're in the business of people, as opposed to property. So those experiences that you had selling CDs and sweets and whatnot, or working on the dairy farm, it was all people focused, and I think it's very relatable when you then talk about property. Toby, what about yourself?
I think, like quite a few people, stumbled into it but by accident, really.
So you as well?
Yeah. So my background story is so basically I've had my own business. I still own this business to today, which I run with my father and my brother. So I bought that business myself, running that, and it was right in the midst of the recession. So it was hard times, and my now wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, she selfishly decided to get pregnant. So I needed extra income.
She decided to get pregnant.
Well, okay, there was it takes two to tango. Well, but that's a different story. But yeah, so she fell pregnant, needed extra income, and she was actually working at an estate agent at the time. She was like, look, I've got to leave my role. There's going to be a space if you want some extra income, because I'd got it to a stage where it could kind of run itself. I had my father and my brother there to assist as well. So she said, why don't you take my job? Like, I think you'd be good at it, because again, the business I had was a people-focused business. It was a pub, which we still got to today, as I mentioned. So people orientated, and I was quite sort of a people person anyway. So yeah, she said, why don't you take my job? So I went, applied, and the director at the time of the estate agent said, look, I don't want to give you the job. He said, because you're going to have to transition period where you're working with your partner, and I think that'd be a bit awkward. So I said, look, I'll tell you what, let me work for you for free for 2 weeks. If after 2 weeks you don't want me, I'll go. You don't have to pay me, but if you like me, keep me on. So he said, okay, do that. After the first week, he was like, yeah, I want to give you the job. Got into a estate agency, then fell in love in not only sales but property itself. Right. So I saw, again, helping people find a property, finding their homes or finding investments at the time, dealing with a lot of investors as well in the location I was operating out of, and then bought my first investment as well at that sort of time, probably about within a year, because I saw the opportunity, saw the market, and sort of grasped the concept quite quickly. So yeah, me and my brother just jumped on an opportunity at that point. So then I started to get into property investment. So I grew within that estate agency. I moved to their head branch up in Surrey, did really well there. But again, going back to my entrepreneurial roots, like owning my own business in the first place, I always wanted a bit more, always wanted to try and improve, and wanted to sort of do it myself. And then growing this sort of the portfolio personally, I wanted to look for a way to help others grow their investment portfolio, because I saw the challenges. If you didn't know about property, or you were limited for time and knowledge, it's very difficult for people, although they wanted to get into property. They had every right idea to get into it, but they struggled. So I was like, well, how can I fill this gap? And I wasn't really aware of the property investment market at the time. And I started to research. I came across some companies, and I said, well, look, I could definitely simulate that and have a more customer service focus. I do it myself, so I could help them invest like I would invest. I can do the DD like I do the DD, due diligence. And then, sort of came into property investment that way, and then came across Nick. Then me and Nick joined forces at Track Capital. Nick, my business partner, so he's based in the Dubai office. Okay. And we joined forces and launched Track Capital, and grew to what we are today. Yeah.
I didn't know about the office in Hong Kong.
Was
that quite recent? Was it?
Yeah, so that we'd hired a consultant late last year in Hong Kong, because we've always had a Hong Kong consultant. Funnily enough, the first hire we made was a Hong Kong consultant, because we had all these Hong Kong clients, but they wouldn't talk to us because of, I think, the language barrier, and just them seeing English sort of numbers and trust, everything like that. Yeah, they're very, very trustworthy people, and it's very hard to sort of get into that zone with them. So we hired a Hong Kong consultant, Cantonese, Mandarin speaking, and she absolutely opened it up. And she's great, because obviously she's aware of the culture. They gel to her. Her customer service levels are massive. She goes above and beyond. So yeah, we've had her since 2020, and then we wanted to expand. She's based in the UK, so we hired Wing, who's our consultant, late last year. And hiring him, we then thought we'd have to get an office there, obviously, to help him. So we got the office out there, and we've been out there a few times this year, and love it out there. They're great clients to deal with, very enthusiastic. They love the UK market, and they want to know more. They want to build their knowledge, and again, that trust is massive. Once you've built that with them, it's great.
So you're sitting at your desk, you receive an email from me, saying we'd like to invite you onto a podcast.
Yeah.
What were your initial thoughts?
That should be in the spam folder.
How much we get?
I think, no, do you know what? I was really intrigued. I mean, I don't know, I can't even remember how quick I responded, but I don't think it took me long, because it's probably the similar mindset to what you're sort of bringing out with this concept of the podcast and getting us in on it, all being in the same industry. I'm under the mentality that we all need to work together in this industry. And I'm very big on, I never want to burn bridges. Yeah. I never want to do anyone dirty, because in this industry, it is very small. It's very niche. And I always say there'll probably be some point where we're going to have to work together, or we'll need to work together, or want to work together, whether that's now, 2 or 5 years' time. And maybe we might have a situation or an issue that we need to deal with as well and work together on. So having that is a big thing. So I'm very big on the industry, getting together, speaking, having that open dialogue, because it's massive, and it only doesn't help us, helps the clients as well, and that's the main thing.
Because I think we spoke, didn't we, before, about how we all do our own individual, whether it's webcams or podcasts, that type of thing, but it's nice for us all to get together and speak on it. You know, we all sell slightly different properties, but that doesn't mean one's better than the other. You know, and like you say, share ideas, and, you know, if people learn bits from it, then it can only be a good thing in my eyes.
Absolutely. And look, let's not take it away from you. I don't think operating for 10 years is a small feat. That's a huge deal. What do you reckon has been the ingredients to operating for this long?
I think you've got to adapt, is what I'd say. You know, if I look back to 10 years ago when we first started the property investment side, we were selling very different sort of properties to what we are now, and we probably had less control at that point. So by that I mean, and you guys will know this, you know, we were a sub-agent essentially. So we sold for other master agents. There wasn't a huge amount of choice to sort of choose from. Whereas as the years have gone on, we've been very much more now where we are picking locations, developments or developers to work with, that we, you know, ultimately, you know, want to. If it's not just we're forced into using them on it. You know, I suppose we're slightly different in the sense that we have the management arm of the business. So that's a big earner for us, you know, and I think it actually helps investors, because it means we're picking locations where we want to manage property.
Agreed, yeah.
But investors benefit from that as well, because it means that we're choosing good locations, is how I see it. So yeah, I think you adapt. I mean, we've all, you know, probably had tough times in the industry. It's not the easiest at times. But I think as long as you learn from it, as long as you communicate well with clients, again, we spoke about this, didn't we, before, you know, speaking to clients, developers, and being very honest with people. You know, it is a good industry to be in.
It is. And for people watching that might not know what a master agent's role is, can you go into that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for us, we're a global master agent. So, I mean, Toby, you touched on it about, and fair play to you, how you're speaking to, you know, clients in other countries and they're buying from you. I suppose we found that slightly difficult. So what we did is we worked with other agents in those different countries, where maybe clients are more inclined to buy from people from their own country, if that makes sense. I think the trust element's
it's huge.
A bit more there. You know, we travelled to Beijing years ago.
It's like language and culture barriers, isn't it, as well? Yeah. It's very hard to get into those markets quite easily.
It is, like I say, so you know, we travelled to Beijing a few years ago, and we really found that at that point it was actually quite difficult to sell direct to clients over there. And we thought, well, maybe we don't need to necessarily do that. You know, if we can work with agents there, and not just China, but, you know, Israel, Argentina, we've got agents.
Wow.
You know, it's ultimately we're reaching a bigger reach of people. You know, like yourself, you know, so we work with other UK agents as well, who, you know, we're all offering the same thing. You know, our direct sales team are still selling the same product to people, but it's just being out there a little bit more.
Which comes with, I'm guessing, its own level of risk as well.
It does, and responsibility, I'd say, as well with it. You know, obviously, a lot of clients, a lot of agents, are trusting us with the projects that we're bringing to them. So not only are we selling projects to clients, but we're selling them to agents like yourself. So yeah, it does bring with it a lot of responsibility, a lot of late hours. You know, obviously there's different time zones, so you know we're often on WhatsApps and all sorts of things late at night, which my wife loves. But you know, so yeah, it isn't easy in that sense.
But it makes it exciting.
It
makes it adaptable. Yeah. No day is the same, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and that is the big thing. You're dead right on that. Of this whole industry, I think, is no day is the same, and that's one of the reasons why I do love it. To be fair, each day I come into the office, there's something new. There's a new potential deal on the cards, a new property that we're looking at, and I'm sure you're the same, Toby, on it. And you know, there's a bit of travel as well with it. So it's exciting that way.
I remember something my dad said to me. He was he owned cafes. Well, we used to work in cafes, and my summers were spent in the caf, which I hated then but appreciate now.
Yeah.
And there was, at the time, it was probably about 20 years ago now, but at the time there was the rise of Costa Coffee, the Starbucks that started to appear on the high street, and for us, which was a greasy spoon, so to speak, that old school caf, I used to sit there and think, Dad, what are you going to do about this? You know, all this competition. He said something to me which has always stuck to me, is like, they don't pay our bills.
Yeah.
Customers do. So stop focusing on them, focus on who actually warrants your attention. And I think that's part and parcel why I have a lot of respect for operators in this industry. I think there's always something to learn. Clients are entitled to shop around. We encourage them to shop around. I think it's important, right?
Well, I think not every client as well is suited to every single business. Like they have different requirements, different ways of interacting as well. So I think that's a big thing and factor. Like you said, shop around. Who do you get on with?
That's what it comes
who
down
do you
to.
gel with?
And what do you need from the property? I think it's a big thing. You know, not every property suits everyone individually on it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys are the same. When we speak to a client, the first thing we ask is, right, so what is it that you're trying to achieve with the property? Which I know sounds a bit cheesy, but it is really important on it. You know, like for me as a sort of young investor, I want to leverage properties. You know, I want to, in 20 years' time, pay off my mortgages on it, get a good income at the same time.
Yeah.
But if I was, fast forward, say if I was 60, 70, it could be a very different situation. And because of that, there's different properties that would suit you on it. So, and that's why this is good, I think, because like we're saying is, you know, we're not saying, right, we're the best agent. We're just saying, you know, our properties suit certain people's, Toby's will suit certain people's, and you same, John, on your side. You know, so I think it's a good idea to do.
We've been in the industry for a little while now. We've seen it evolve. What are your thoughts on how it has evolved, good or bad?
Do you mean the off-plan new build or just the property market in general?
The property market. I mean, we can always tackle the new build. We'll go into the new build and off-plan sector specifically, but more of a generic overview.
The property market in general, I mean, look, it's definitely had its bumps over the past few years. Pandemic, lots of different scenarios over the most recent. We've had Brexit, we've had pandemic, we've had the attack on landlords, like the Section 24, mortgage rate relief, that sort of thing. So I think it's changed in terms of its... I think the thing with the property market in general, and this comes down to the whole operation, it's very archaic, but it's unable to really keep up with modern times. If that's how many houses we need to build, how we're building them, what the process is for buying and selling, we are still quite a bit behind for how things have moved on. So I think it's changed quite a lot, but probably not enough. I think there still needs a lot more to be done to be a bit more forward thinking. If we look at the conveyancing process, how outdated that is, even transparency on data. Like obviously we operate in Dubai, we sell Dubai property. If you want to look at the data for prices, rental prices, it's all there in front of you to make an informed decision. And their land registry, the Dubai Land Department, they are able to upload their data pretty much instantly. So you've got it at the tips of your fingers when you need it. It's not like ours where it's going to take 6 months to a year to find out how much a property sold for. So I think, that's really big there. And I think one thing that's definitely influenced the property market, or starting to influence the property market, and I can't gauge whether this is for good or bad, is the rise of probably social media. And
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, people sort of maybe perceiving and portraying images of the property market which aren't actually correct, or maybe bend the truth a bit, and that can distort other people's views of the market, either good or bad as well. And yeah, we've had a lot of other changes in the interim, but I'd say probably the main ones that I've noticed.
Absolutely.
I think for me as well, I've noticed it's actually been seen as a bit more trendy now to buy property investment. You know, in the past years ago, it was maybe if you had a flash car or that type of thing was your way of showing wealth. Whereas I think COVID was a big turning point we noticed, where people actually wanted that secondary form of income.
Would you say that's the younger generation?
Yeah.
Because if you speak to the older generation, they're like, I'm getting out.
Yeah.
They're like, I used to have good
yeah.
mortgage rates, so you could get properties for decent prices. I didn't have as many headaches with tenants.
Yeah.
I think that's the transition.
Yeah.
I mean, you always have that, don't you? You pass the baton down, but we're seeing, I mean, the exodus now of landlords that's being
I think
reported.
they've probably just been fed up as well with the amount of change, regulation,
exactly,
the bruises.
Yeah.
Whereas for us,
it's
new
the norm.
generation, it's like we're unaware of what's happened in the past. So it's kind of a good thing.
Yeah, and I think you did right. I think we've definitely noticed the demographics have changed over the last few years. You get a lot more younger investors coming into it. And I think lockdown was a big moment for that. You know, people were thinking, right, well, how can I make extra bits of money without having to work stupidly hard, sort of thing on it. And so yeah, I would say it's a bit more trendy. It's popular if you've got
which is a bit of a problem, because I'm with you on this, Toby. I think the world of social media has glamorized it.
Yeah,
it's made it seem like you just follow these particular steps to success, but for anyone who's been in property, it's not a steps, it's years of patience and nurturing and having experiences, good and bad. It's not as black and white.
No. And it obviously it can be dangerous as well, because when something does become popular, people can latch on to that, and I think we might touch on it, but a lot of these educational type things like you see online, I feel are dangerous.
Oh yeah.
Well, the market has exploded. I read somewhere where the market has grown by something like 500 million in the past couple of years. Well, a lot of these gurus are now starting to come to the surface, offering these courses. And don't get me wrong, I think there are a lot of credible operators out there that are offering good advice. Some have been on the podcast.
You've got to be careful what we say.
But you also have to be careful because a lot of these people haven't actually bought any property.
But that's my point, is are these people, are they selling courses as opposed to selling property? And I think that's the big difference. You know, we're not here doing this to sell a course or anything like that. We're here to, you know, promote the property industry and getting involved in property, because it sounds like we're all investors ourselves. You know, we bought property, we believe in it. I just worry sometimes, you know, you see these things online of these companies that say you don't need any money to invest in property, and it drives you mad, because, and especially, you know, in the times that we're in where inflation's going up and stuff like that, the fact is you do need money to live first and foremost.
Hang on. So you're telling me that girl on TikTok that was pointing while music was playing to different figures and saying how easy it was, she was lying? Oh my God.
There's a few of them as well.
Wow, that's it.
Mic drop.
I'm done. I'm done. I'm out of this. I'm out of this game now.
It's shocking.
But it is, you know, because I think because we've been in the industry a long time, that there are certain pitfalls that you have to be careful with. You know, and if you just spend, if you're getting told, look, you only need a couple of thousand to be able to invest in property, I don't think that is true. I think you need a good pot to start with, to then buy the right property and move on.
And if you don't, I'd recommend, certainly in our industry, just wait, build up a little bit more.
Absolutely,
You know, the rush in buying any property, I don't think is the right thing. It's not about buying anything; it's about buying the right property that will push on.
But that goes back to my point on the trendiness of it. There's, unfortunately, some people think, well, I don't want to be working 9 to 5. Is there a quick fix?
They want it now.
Yeah, they want it now. The patience has gone, hasn't it, with a lot of people, and that's why I think it's a good thing in some sense that there's younger people getting into it, which can only be a good thing. But there's a dangerous side of it, of people taking advantage of that.
But is it also fair to say that, although you mentioned it was archaic, Toby, in some aspects it is broken, but in other aspects it isn't? You know, are we trying to change something that just works? Yes, it might be slow. Yes, it might be a little bit dated here and there. Certainly from the tech aspect involved in property, maybe the conveyancing side of things might be a little bit outdated. But generally speaking, it's not something that can be systemised.
No, I don't think it's an easy fix, to be fair.
It definitely has evolved, and like I mentioned at the start, I've been involved in the industry for some time. I remember running contracts on a Friday afternoon, physical contracts to a solicitor to get them signed, and running them to the other guy to get it exchanged. That doesn't happen anymore. The evolution of social media, I think, was mentioned, but also just making things a lot quicker and a lot easier. There are drawbacks to that, definitely. Convenience is. This is more of a profound thing for life, really. Convenience is a blessing and a curse, isn't it? But so the industry's evolved, even in the short time that we've been around as a company. I think you guys mentioned the onset of TikTok stars and social media representation of how easy things are. It really isn't that easy. You've got to be in it for a long term. It's not a quick get-rich-quick scheme. It's a get-rich-for-sure scheme, but it's definitely not a get-rich-overnight scheme. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people want to be in it and they want to get the wins straight away. We deal with it all the time. I used to run an event called the 30 and Under Club, educating younger investors. We found we had a lot of younger investors, lots of these young guys making a lot of money now, wondering where to put it. And a lot of it was, well, how's this going to turn around in the next year? And all of my education was about, you've got to think 10, 15 years down the line.
Which is quite hard to do.
Oh, it's so difficult when you're 22 years old. Yeah. It's definitely difficult to do. It's a big portion of your life. So yes, it's difficult to sort of get that message across in a responsible and attractive way.
And did you see more people like the last few years, like we mentioned, into that type of thing, like under 30-year-olds?
Yeah.
Or have you always seen that?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot more people get involved at a young age, because it has been so popular, because it is on social media, because you do see it on Instagram. People doing walkthroughs, and I bought this for X, spent £4 on doing it up and turned it around for Y. Yeah. That's great, but let's see behind it. Let's see what's actually what really happened, and it's not as easy as just making a quick TikTok video.
It's like the homes under the hammer, isn't it? You never see a bad home.
I've been on that.
Always go well.
You've been on that.
I've been on that. Yeah. Just want to put that out there.
But it must have went well then, because they all go well.
Do you know, it's quite funny actually. Have you noticed? It's the same shot every time an agent walks in. They walk in and they tell you, look at the ceiling, look at the corner, look round.
This is script.
And walk out. Literally, that's all you have to do. Yeah. I was in and out there in a few minutes, because they were like, oh, do you need time to think about what you're going to say? I was like, no, let me just get in and out. I got stitched up when I was a estate agent.
Well, this is it. Homes Under the Hammer made it seem so easy to go to an auction, right, which was usually reserved for people who knew what they were doing, right? You got Mr. and Mrs. Smith at an auction now, and they're packed, so the deals aren't the same anymore, because everybody's bidding on the same thing. It's just that the market's completely changed, thanks to Homes Under the Hammer.
Yeah,
I would say.
Well, the one I went out to, they didn't make any money.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
right.
yeah. They bought the house, and they had very, very high aspirations, and didn't work out like that.
New build and off plan is a divisive market. What advice would we give to aspiring investors?
I would say be diligent, do your research, and I think what Stuart touched on is you need to be thinking long term. Like it's no get rich quick. You can have a short term strategy, but realistically, are you personally going to be able to execute that? Because realistically, a short term strategy is I'm going to flip a property, or you can do the work yourself. Have you got the contractors? Have you got the cash funds ready to go to deploy, accessible?
The contingency.
Are you able to do the deal quickly? Have you got the experience? 9 times out of 10.
Have you got the risk tolerance as well? I think this is a big one. Like, what is your makeup as an investor? Because when it hits the fan, it does test you.
It invariably does hit the fan. There's something that always happens. There's always a rug that gets pulled out from under you.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. You've got to have the steel. You've got to have the metal to be able to say, right, I'm going to get in here and do this. I've got a regular investor who works with us who says, look, every 10 properties I buy, I know one's going to be a bit of a dud. So I factor that in, which is really sort of okay.
I also like to say to them, have a plan A, B, and C. A being best, B being yes, it's good. I'm happy with that. C being worst case scenario. If you're happy with all three, Like, don't get me wrong, you're not going to stomach scenario C, but if scenario C is one of the worst scenarios that you're thinking of, and you're still like, well, I can get by, it's not ideal, but I'll tolerate that. If you've got all those three in place you're happy with, then go ahead.
It's a really good point, especially on rental projections.
Yes.
I would say as well, you see a lot of companies that, say, oh, you'll achieve X amount of yield and stuff. And, but we obviously sell a lot of properties that we can do short-term lets on, which is brilliant, and the yields are, really good. But we'll always also show what would you get on a standard AST, because that should be your backup. And if that stacks up, and you'd still be happy
I've
with
seen that from you firsthand, and which is a really good thing.
I think so, yeah, because it just shows, like Toby says, you need a backup plan if something did go wrong, if the market did slightly change on it. It's important. We're talking about people's life savings here. It's serious stuff, and we've got a responsibility as agents, to bring forward the right properties for them.
Not to sound blasé about it, but in that moment, everything is so heightened. But when you spread it across 10, 15 years and you look at your buying journey, it's not the be-all and end-all. Your journey changes, like you change, like we change.
Well, it's the same with the, with interest rates at the moment. It's a big buzzword at the moment, buzz term. And, guys are, rates are high, and okay, they're coming down at the moment, but rates are high, I don't know if it's going to stack up at this stage. Like, look, if you factor these high rates in for the next 2 to 5 years, if you look at it from a 15-year time period,
it's insignificant.
It's insignificant. It really
they're not talking about the rent rises either.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you don't factor in the fact that rents are going up. Hand over fist, right? So you add those two factors together. It's so sensationalized, I think is the word, right? When we're talking about social media, everything's now. You can only see as far as your face, as your nose, right? So it's very difficult to get that across to people, isn't it? Yeah.
Current regulations or restrictions that you feel have hindered the growth of the market, are there any in particular that you feel have really affected our industry?
I would say there's a few. I think stamp duty has been a big factor, especially for the overseas. Yeah. So you've got the surcharge on just second homes, the 3%, and then the overseas surcharge, the extra 2%. When you speak to a lot of investors now, especially overseas, and the markets they operate in, which used to be London, high-end Manchester, Birmingham, they're kind of looking at again, I don't really fancy that at the moment, or the way the mortgage market is and the way the market is in general, it doesn't stack up as well for them, so they're a bit more hesitant. And I think that's a factor. The Section 24 mortgage rate relief, that's been a big factor, hence people shifting into limited companies. They're the two stamp duty now. And then I would say also, just a general one which you'll see in the media and plastered everywhere, is the attack on landlords, which is perceived as, but the tightening on tenants' rights and getting tenants out of properties, the new renters reform bill that's coming in, you're going to have the abolishment of Section 21, that sort of thing. And that is putting a lot of even new landlords off, because they watch these programs where they see the horror tenants and they can't get them out.
But not all landlords are bad.
They're not. No, and that's the thing. So
we all get, we're all tarred with the same brush, aren't we?
Yeah, I literally had a call at my property today, and they're like, look, they're not airing out the kitchen. There's damp. We've told them to air it out. It's a bit cold in there, and what do you want to do? I said, well, what's the best thing? Oh, you probably need to get a bit of damp proof and get a dehumidifier. I said, drop everything, just go and get it now. They're like, you sure? I said, yeah. I said, look, that's the tenants. They're living in that house. They're living in that home. I want it to be the top condition ever. I've got another friend who's got properties exactly the same. He's like, if he tells the agent, if there's ever a property with that problem with the property, and that's obviously, and the tenant raises it to you, I want it dealt with as quickly as possible.
That's not newsworthy though, is it?
It's not newsworthy. The newsworthy is obviously the horror stories and stuff like that, but this is what this is magnified to the investors that aren't experienced, or maybe it is their first one, and then they hear Section 21, they hear the renters reform, and then they're like, do you know, I don't even want this.
But wouldn't it be better if they improve regulations where you had to keep it to a certain standard? Rather than increasing taxes and stamp duty and all that, where you're punishing
EPC stuff.
But they've tried, but they don't adhere to it. So some of the properties I own, they're in areas where you've got selective licensing, so you have to. And this is the hilarious thing. So you have to. So I've just had to pay £800 for a license. Okay, last 5 years to rent out my property to tenants, and part of that license means, technically, I'm supposed to keep it up to scratch, has to be to certain standards, has to be fit for purpose for the tenants, etc., etc. All the right things. Do the council come and check the property or give a damn about the property or me as a landlord? No, they just take the money and they'll go, oh, if there's an issue, then we'll come check you out. They don't actually follow through, so they're not they'll make out that it's for the good, but it gets them a bit of extra money, makes them look good, and it's just a process. It doesn't actually fix the problem. What you're mentioning, correct, would be great.
Fixes the problem.
But that fixed the problem. But then it's the logistics. How do these councils cope with it?
Who manages it?
Yeah, it's the back end. You're absolutely right. It is
That's the
logistics.
problem.
I think one aspect is, there are regulations that we can really talk about and say it's dampened the market. But I think that's one of the draws as to why people come into our market, because of the red tape.
Well, this is it. You know, when you talk about overseas investors,
Exactly.
You know, so I've worked in overseas markets. I sold property in Brazil, Thailand. I bought property in the Philippines. You know, all these things. Their legal systems are far
Looser.
inferior to British property law. And British property law is some of the oldest property law in the world, and what a lot of other major economies build their property law on. And so it goes. You know, this sort of works in a number of ways. In the fact that we have all these restrictions and red tape that is so attractive to people over in sort of lesser economies. It's the same with, you know, the fact that, you know, we're in a bit of a economic downturn at the moment, but we're still a top 5 economy in the world. So we've got, you know, loads of different countries that still see this as a safe haven to put their money into, and if they're ring fenced and protected, happy days. For them.
And it can be frustrating at the same time for us as agents as well. You know, where the solicitors are taking so much time with things, but you're dead right. It's also an attractiveness to investors that they've got that level of protections, that solicitors are there to protect them and warn them of the risks. You know, they do need that.
You buy property in Dubai, you know, they don't.
You just get a contract.
You get a contract. It's almost a government standard contract. That's it. I mean, the process is a lot speedier, and you don't have to spend any time choking any necks of any solicitors. That feels like I spend most of my time doing at the moment.
But there are downfalls.
But there definitely are
no
downfalls.
perfect
Oh,
market.
absolutely. There definitely are downsides to that. And I personally prefer the red tape over here, if I'm honest.
And I think one thing that maybe I'm making my life a little bit more difficult here, but regulation on agents, the entry to or the barrier to entry, I think needs
It's very
to be
low.
adjusted.
But again,
What is it? Is there any regulation at all?
there is no
And
regulation.
that's the problem. We're kind of fighting. There are so many good operators out there,
Yeah.
but there are also so many bad operators out there.
I mean, that comes down to that's been a big. That's why I got out of estate agency. I don't know if it was the same for you, is because it was the entry level, as you said, was so low, and the only way that is able to shift is by regulation.
Yeah.
But by regulation, well, what do you need to attract the people that need to come in, do the regulation, and achieve that standard? Well, there needs to be money. To have money, the estate agents need to charge higher fees. So the reason you have better standards in the likes of America, even Dubai, is because the agents are getting paid high quality wages and commissions. So of course, you then attract the best people. It's like any job. You're going to attract the best people by paying the best. The unfortunate thing is, in this country, and I'm talking about estate agency, sellers are so used to paying 1% fees, they're never going to want to pay higher. Why would you? If I come in and say, I'll sell you home, but it's 5% or nothing, and I'll do the best job, I'll be on hand, I'll do every bit of process, he'll go, oh, that's brilliant. But Joe Bloggs over there can do it for 1%.
This is what I'm saying. Unless the
Across
entire
the
market,
market,
Yeah, and
They-
that's the
they
only way you'd
should
have
move
regulation.
forward.
Because otherwise, why is an estate agency going to pay for regulation, or why is an estate agent going to fund themselves to get the
get
regulation?
better,
Because you can say it's regulation, but it has to be top quality. Otherwise, what's the point of having the regulation?
Totally agree.
And it's a vicious cycle, and that's why I kind of don't. Estate agency is very different to what we do, different process, and it will go. And that's why I think there's a massive change. Letting agents as well. Like they get a bad rep. Their job, and they only charge 10%. And I always say to people, 10% is a very fair fee. If you see the job, the regulation, the red tape that they have to cover for you, you would thank them. Like I pay my. I'm not just saying this. I actually pay my letting agent more than I could if I want. I could probably negotiate them down another % or 2. But the service they
that's their
provide,
living.
that's their living, but also the service they provide me. Why would what's an extra 1 to 2%? And then what are they going to cut corners because I've knocked off 1 to 2%? Their job is so hard, so hard.
And I think as a landlord, if you're happy with the amount that you're taking, does it really matter what other people
No.
are getting? Do you know what I mean? I mean, we do service accommodation, as mentioned, and you know, our fees are 19%, and some people go, God, 19%, like, because they're comparing it to the letting agency fees. But the amount of work involved,
it's relative.
So
in managing a short-term let property is colossal.
So you're talking about, you know, vetting tenants, you know, vetting, you know, visitors. So check-ins, check-outs, you're there on hand. You guys are there on hand to replace a hairdryer, to replace a, you know, to change a light bulb, no matter what time of the day. So these short-term let management fees, they are high, but it's real job, isn't it?
But also as well for the investor, I always say, like, we're going into business with you. Like, it's in our interest to charge high nightly rates, get good occupancy levels, because yes, we make more money, but so do you as an investor. I think that's the point of, you know, yes, maybe, you know, fees are slightly higher in the investment section, but you get a really good service with it. There is a big difference between an estate agent and a property investment company. As all four of us know that.
Massively.
You know, around it. So.
Negative feedback. We work in an unforgiving market, right? And as I'm sure every company, there's no company out there with, well, it's unlikely they've got 100% good reviews. There's always the inevitability that you see negative reviews. How do you guys deal with that? And is that something you just sort of accept and move on, or does it get to you?
Yeah, I think the hard thing is a lot of the negative side can often be third-party problems that gets blamed on the agent. That I'd say is my biggest frustration over the years that I've been in the industry. So at the moment, obviously, with interest rates being higher, and you know, if someone has a bad service with a mortgage broker, let's say, it's back to us as the agent, or you know, you referred them, and that can be frustrating. You know, we can only control so much. We can only help and put you in touch with people. So yeah, I think we do get a lot of negative stick, if you like, of it. But the vast majority of the time, it's out of our control.
You just accept it. You understand it's part and parcel of the industry. Let's move on. Or
well, you just have to communicate, and that's the big thing with everything. You know, be honest, be straight up with people. You know, of exactly what's happening. If it's a bill delay, tell them straight on that. You know, if it's interest rates at the moment being higher, warn them before it. Say, look, you're probably going to get 6-7% interest rates. Doesn't mean you can't make good money from property. So as long as you're upfront and honest with them on that, I think morally you can live with it.
I think accepting it is, obviously you have to accept it comes with any business, any job role. There's always going to be someone unhappy. You can't please everybody, of course. But how we deal with it is we will, if somebody does have negative feedback, obviously we will do what we can to try and solve that issue, to find some sort of resolution. We'll work with them. If somebody leaves us negative feedback in the past, we have just spoke to them and sort of tried to help them figure out. And like you mentioned, what usually transpires is it's not us, but who's in the firing line or who have they got the direct contact with. It's us, because exactly. We're that front facing person, the connection between them. They can't vent, they can't get access to them directly. So who do they go to?
Speak to the Bank of England. So
exactly. I think that's the thing. So you have to accept it because of those reasons. There's a lot of stuff out of our control, but it's about how you deal with it. It's not shying away. It's talking, communicating, as you mentioned earlier, trying to help them. And look, I've had a client who bought a property from me back in, it must have been about late 2019. She emailed me a few months ago to find out the information of the management company that's running the building, and I didn't go, oh no, she wasn't really an issue, but I could have gone, no, don't worry, like, you bought that from me like over 3 years ago. Don't worry, I'm okay, thanks. You haven't spoke to me since. I was like, no, it's fine. Took the time on my day, used my network, said, look, here's who you need to speak to. Let me know if you have any issues. She spoke to them, come back, said, yeah, no, thank you for sorting that out for me. Now, again, that's not a problem scenario, but it's about communicating, helping, and having that mindset of it's a long-term game. Like, even if you bought from me 4 years ago, I'm not going to shy away from trying to help if I can help you, or try and assist you in any way in the future, because it's a long-term game, long-term relationship. You've committed a lot of money. I've been part of that process. So at any point I can help you, I feel great for doing that, to be fair. I
agree with you. It's about the communication, isn't it? You know, I feel like when people invariably do have a bee in their bonnet, if it's attacked and proactively sort of try to be dealt with, just being proactive, I think, is the main thing. Trying to get to the bottom of things. There are things that we cannot control, like you said earlier. There are things that we cannot control, but we're going to get it in the neck for. But it's just about being as communicative as possible, as present as possible, in my opinion. If someone writes a bad review or leaves, we reply to them as quickly as possible and try and get to the bottom of it. The thing that does make me laugh, though, is the anonymous. We've got no record of you at all ever using our services.
It wasn't me.
But we've got no record. Don't know who you are. How can I solve your problem? How can I help? Just trying to be as open as possible as we can, and trying to attack it and make sure that everybody gets what they paid for in the end.
I think John, I was for us as well, of the 10 years that we've been doing property investments, we saw how important the after sales side of it is. So for the first few years that we were doing it, we didn't have a after sales department. You just now and again ask, how is so and so getting on with their property, and you just can't deal with that. So the last few years we've put a lot of emphasis on that, because it's so important, communicating with clients, putting them in touch with the right people, mortgage brokers, solicitors. That side of things is so important.
It's huge. Our firm is actually a little bit lopsided. So when I first started Magna, the idea was I want to pack out the sales floor, I want to have as many consultants as possible, but actually a large chunk of the investment is on the back end. That's the hard part of the job. Speaking to a client and building that rapport is difficult. It requires skill, effort, consistency, but the hard aspect, as we all know, is going through the actual sale, the contract questions, the emotions, the delays,
the other parties,
exactly,
all that sort of thing.
And the sales consultant really is kind of like blinded to that aspect, because they're already thinking of the next client and what their responsibilities are. So
commissions and
but I think it derives back to something we spoke about off air, Toby, and I like what you said, which was managing expectations. Don't get me wrong, you can never stop a negative review. A client's entitled to say what they want to say, but if you can manage that from the very get-go and sort of expose them to the idea that this is worst case scenario, are you happy with that? And it's a yes, then really those things can be mitigated, I think. There was actually a survey that was carried out last year, and the number one voted topic amongst all landlords was their pet peeve. Probably wouldn't be what you think it would be. It's unresponsiveness. It's the fact that people understand and accept that things can go wrong. We're all realists. We know that we're dealing with money, dealing with people, dealing with investments, things can go wrong. But it's getting through to someone if and when it does go wrong. That's really where I think the negative sort of ill feeling derives from. So in our view, what poses the biggest threat? Bogus educators, AI, or more regulation?
I think Stuart should go, because I feel like you've got
what poses
itching.
I can sense it.
I think it's the bogus. I mean, it's the get rich quick guys.
I was going to say, define the bogus education.
It's the come on this course, and don't get me wrong, there's some great courses out there. I've done a couple of courses, some great courses out there. Come on this course, do this, and then you're on the course, and you got to get the next course to know the next bit. And it's like, all right, you're buying this, you spent 20 grand by the end of it. You could have spent that 20 grand on putting it into something that's working for you.
Give me the product and I'll pay more for it.
Absolutely.
Where is the product?
So I've got a bit of a pet peeve about that, and I just think that selling courses for courses' sake is very popular at the moment, and the discords and the groups and things like that, where people want an easy fix. Nobody wants to get their hands dirty and go and do something, right? They want an easy fix, so someone could just tell me what I can do on Discord and I'll be fine. And people are afraid to get busy and go and do it. I think my business partner says, don't wait to buy property, buy property and wait. Just you're sitting around taking a course and watching the market and trying to time it correctly, and it just you've got to find something you like, find something that stacks up, do the A, B, and C. Does that work? Right? If it works, then go for it. You're never going to time it right. You're never going to get the right timing. There's always something that's going to change. The rates are going to be high, or something happens in the regulations. There's always going to be something. But trying to time the market is just impossible.
And if it is that easy as some people make out, well, why are they sharing the secret?
Oh, come on, yeah.
Just go and do it yourself. Why do you have to have a room full of people?
I think it's detrimental to our industry as well, and the property industry in general, because the people that they're brainwashing on these courses that they're going back out and actually selling to investors or promising investors the world, and then it falls to pieces, and then that investor's view of the property market is negative. They lose money, and they're coming out in masses. I've had people contact me, and now I'm quite responsive to these people, and they're like, I'm a property, I think I mentioned it, say property entrepreneur and a property sourcer, property investor. How many properties you got? Well, I haven't got any properties yet. So I was like, okay. And I had this, I'll never forget, this one lad, and he was reaching out to me, and he was asking what I did in property. I was going back to him. He told me a course he'd been on. And I literally said to him how much you spent, and he sent this young lad had spent a few £1,000s. He said, I want to get in property. I'm really keen. What should I do? I've done this course, and I've got no money down. I said, look, it doesn't work like that. And he'd soon found out, and he actually came back to me. He said, what shall I do? He said, because what I've been taught isn't working. I can't find investors. I can't sell and source, and I'm not making any money. Luckily, he was young, so he lived at home. And I said, what, you want to get into property? I said, he said, yeah. I said, well, I can make sure you can get paid to learn about property. He said, well, no, how do I do that? I went, go be an estate agent. I said, if you want to learn about property, you want to learn about the process, so go get paid to learn it. I said, that's how I learn. I said to him, if you have a client who you might find a property for, I said, what are you going to do if the survey comes back and it's negative and there's a problem with mortgages? Oh, does that happen? Well, yeah. And what happens if the solicitor brings up a fault in the title, and you have to deal with the client to sort that out, and you're not going to get paid? Oh, is that a thing? I said, yeah. I said, that's the problem. I said, you don't know the process. You don't have the experience. I said, go and get paid to do it. Do it for 2 years. Go learn about how to sell to investors, how to sell to a homeowner occupier, what they're doing. Watch that. Listen how the solicitors operate. Listen to how the mortgage broker deals with an issue. So you will learn a lot more, and you'll get paid doing it. Very and he was like, oh, yeah, good point.
Very true. Yeah, totally agree. I've had, sorry to interrupt, I've had people call my office and say, listen, I'm I've got some good access to some good properties. Okay, yeah. I just want to know if you can let me have access to your investors. And well, okay, sure, yeah, why not? Taken a long time to build up this network. I'll just hand it over to you on a phone call. Thanks a lot. But you're right. It's about getting in. It's about educating and understanding that the hurdles that are invariably going to come up, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we had in mind when we started the company is everybody who works for us has to be an investor. They have to have owned property, they have to have sold property, they have to have bought property, right? They have to have gone through that process for themselves. It's so important, otherwise you've got 22-year-olds trying to tell a 65-year-old man who's planning for his retirement and building his portfolio and his wealth, 22-year-old guy, no offense to 22-year-old guys, but trying to tell him the best way to do it and how to, what he should be buying, what he should be spending his money on. It lacks credibility, in my honest opinion. It lacks credibility. If you've not been through it yourself, how on earth are you going to advise me and help me through it? Because things are going to go wrong, and I need you with me when they go wrong.
Yeah, and I think a good property investment company should offer education. Anyway, I'm sure we all do in some shape or form, a bit similar to yourself, Stuart. So our consultants, we have always went for really experienced consultants, whether that's their investors themselves or they've been in the industry a long time, because they learn from mistakes like we all do in life on it. And that was the big thing we wanted from our sales team, especially for me. Obviously I was really young when I entered into the market, and I wanted to learn from the people around them. Just because I was their manager doesn't mean that I had to be any bigger than them. I learnt from them over the years, and I still do. We still learn from each other on it. And I think clients recognise that. They want to hear someone on the other end of the phone who's got some form of experience.
Been through it.
Yeah, been through it, whether that's they're an investor, whether they've helped, numerous investors over the years. It's so important. So you should expect that as an investor to get that level of education anywhere from a company.
Stuff like this, though, this is perfect education. Podcasts, there's a lot of free. I think going back to the educators and the courses, I think the issue is a lot of that stuff is out there for free. They just package it up in a fancy way, whereas realistically, if you wanted to, you could go on YouTube, you could go into property forums, you could go to, there's investor clubs, like property investor clubs, meetups you could go to, you could speak to landlords, speak to investors, and you could gain that knowledge without paying thousands for something which you probably can't implement, to be fair.
I think I saw something that's interesting. The biggest currency at the moment is actually attention.
Yeah.
It is.
It's not information. It's it's who shouts the loudest, who packages it up the best.
Yeah.
Eyes, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what's drawing in the crowds. Look, I want to balance the argument slightly because educators can sit on a podcast and trash our industry.
They're going to hear
They
us.
do.
Yeah. Developers inflate their prices. No one likes leasehold apartments.
Yeah.
Why are we all operating in this market? What are the draws for us? Why put ourselves in a market which is quite divisive and it is quite niche?
My true and honest answer is the investors we deal with, they're not able or ready to go into a hard investment. When I say hard investment, I mean the secondary market is a minefield. I'm able to invest in the secondary market because I know what I'm looking for. I've got the experience and I have the time, capacity, and network to do so. Okay, the investors we're dealing with, they're what we call armchair, hands-off investors. They're usually in jobs which are very high demanded. They haven't got time. And the amount of investors I've spoken to, and they're like, no, I'm not too keen on new build and off plan. The yields are slightly less than if I go find one I might go to Liverpool and find a secondary house at. Okay, where are you based? I'm based in London. What do you do as a job? I'm a dentist. I work 5 days a week and it's absolutely flat out at the moment. Okay, have you got time on a Saturday to go and view 16 properties in one day? Well, no. I was like, well, then you're not going to buy a property. I said, and when you do buy that property, what happens in 6 months' time when it falls through? Because you're in a chain. Something crops up, someone pulls out, you lose your money with solicitors. Oh, can that happen? Yes. I said, and what are you going to do when you buy that property and you haven't done the correct survey, or it's old, or it looks nice on the outset, but what you don't realise is you think it's a nice road, but the two neighbours up next to you, absolute nightmares. You're going to have terrorised tenants living there by the neighbour. Stuff like that, which they don't comprehend. And I say, excellent. If that's going to be an issue for you, new build, it's not as desirable. It's not as high yielding as some of those properties. The yields will be decent, they'll be solid, the risk is lower. A lot of these developments have done the due diligence. They're picking areas where they know they can sell, or if they need a plan B to hold on to the asset, they're going to rent it out. Also, you've got no worry about works. You haven't got to worry about contractors coming in the first week that you own it, coming in and screwing up the works because you needed to put a new kitchen in and they've messed that up. And then you've got to delay a tenant going, and you've just got something new with good warranties, all brand new, spank, ready to go. And the tenants are going to love it, and it's going to be in a better location, which you don't have to worry about as much. Does that sound good? Well, yeah, of course it does. I'm not going to sell these sorts of investors to someone who's maybe retired and can spend their weekends and weekdays viewing properties. I'm not going to sell this type of property to a builder who can see a good flip and refurb that he can do the work on and go do it himself. That's not what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with busy professionals, lack time and actual knowledge. They could be in a very well paid job, a very high intellectual job, but when it comes to knowledge and property is a different kettle of fish altogether. So that's why I focus on that.
I can sense the passion.
Yeah, that's it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. You're absolutely right. I think it's minimising headaches is what I say. It's what I say to people. Look, what you want for your first property investment is as little headache as possible. You are, time poor, cash rich, let's say time poor, and want to get into it. You want to minimise your risks, right? You want to go where there's the biggest audience, right? So young professional market, that's the demographic of tenant you want. You want city centre, so you're going to get a certain calibre of tenant. You want to be high quality, but not too high quality. You don't want to be the absolute top end of thing, because that audience is very, very small from a rental point of view. So good quality, rentable, good location, and new. So the maintenance issues are minimal as possible, and that's going to get you on. It's going to get you on the ladder. It's going to get your feet at the under the table for the next 5-10 years. And in that time, you built up your war chest as an investor, and you can go on and do more sort of adventurous things. But like you say, it's about minimising the risks straight away, minimising those headaches.
I think staggering the process is a big thing for new investors. If they've never done a mortgage before and they've never bought a property before, like off plan, for example, gives them some breathing space. If they find a property like on the secondary market, existing market, that they have to buy there and then, they have to go through the whole conveyancing solicitors process alongside a mortgage process, which is very daunting, very stressful, and it can lead them to crumble and lead it to fail because they run out of time. A seller then pulls out because they're not serious. Whereas with off plan, if you're a new investor, it gives you time. Okay, you secure the property, you go through the conveyancing process, which is a headache in itself, but you can do that just on its own. We can focus on getting you through that. You learn that steps, then you've got a bit of breathing space. Okay, now we've got a couple of months where we can start working on the mortgage in the background. Then when we're close to completion, okay, now we can do the mortgage process. We've done the nitty gritty conveyancing side, which is really hard. Now we can stage the mortgage process, which again can be a bit of a headache, but we can do that at that point. And that spreads it out. Once they've gone through that process, then next time they might say, well, actually, I can do both at the same time. Or they might go, well, on its own, it was a nightmare. I can't imagine doing both. So again, it just, like you said, gets their feet under the table. They experience the processes and they learn a hell of a lot. And then they're able to, I always say, look, you can go out and do it on your own after that, maybe after the first one or first couple, find your feet, and then you might want to diversify or change your strategy and go into the existing market or wherever it may be you want to go into.
A lot of the strategies work. Yeah. There's not one right strategy and the others are wrong. I think it just depends on who you speak to and what your circumstances are.
And
for us,
and the market conditions
the
as
market
well.
conditions, absolutely. But I think it also comes down to, there's no harm in diversifying. I'm a big advocate for that, and we encourage investors to explore different avenues. So I don't think there's one route to success.
Correct.
You get this stigma of no one likes flats, no one rents flats, and then you go beyond that and you see flats on train lines and they're all packed out and it's like, what are you talking about?
So I'll add to that. It's so funny. We had a conversation with a client on the phone. Oh, well, I don't like that. It's central. Look at the what the view. It's facing that. No, listen, that's not. So I said to one of my guys in the office, where do you live? Holloway Road. What's your bedroom window look at? A brick wall. Why do you rent that place? Because it's convenient.
How much do you pay?
How much you pay? A heck of a lot. Why do you rent there? Because it's convenient for me, and it's a decent quality, and it's in the right location. It's so funny that what
it's an opinion-based industry.
Oh, it's so
because we all live in one. It's all personal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but then that's what they shouldn't be doing.
Absolutely.
I always say it's a business.
Absolutely.
It's an investment, but it's a business. Look at the numbers. I mean, don't get me wrong. You're not going to buy a flat in the middle of the field because the numbers might look good. Obviously, there's a bit more to it. But like you said, a city centre, the numbers will stack up. You know what it's going to look at it. It doesn't matter. Obviously, there is a little bit of, you don't want to be in a horrible position completely when it comes to resale.
Emotions are important.
Emotions to a degree, but I think, like you mentioned, people they tend to try to buy as if they were living it themselves. I'm like, no, you're not the target market. The target market is, like you just mentioned, the renter wants convenience, wants location, wants maybe amenities on their doorstep, maybe within the building, whatever that may be, maybe security. Maybe they want a nice, secure. Maybe they're going to university or they're sending their child to university.
You've got to take yourself out of that.
Exactly.
That is difficult to do. That is difficult to do, to try and get that across to people, because everything is an emotional. We're emotional creatures.
You're emotionally attached to your money.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there you go.
So it also depends on what you're looking to do with the property. Like, we sell a lot of furnished holiday-let properties. Now, there is an element of emotion involved with that, because you get people that think, they're looking at it from an investment property.
True.
But part of them is also looking, do I want to visit there with family? Like, I bought a buy-to-let property in Chester, and the idea at the start was, I'm going to make a good income from it, but also from my family to visit when they're coming to visit me. It hasn't turned out that way because I've let it out and they haven't stayed much. But the intention was there with it, so there was a bit of emotion involved with how do I want it to look, the views and stuff like that sort of thing. So you are right in some sense. It sounds brutal, but it's a box that makes you money, essentially. But on odd occasion, there can be.
You can't help it. Some investors go beyond where they want to be proud landlords. Yeah, they want a sense and a feeling of that
trophy assets.
Exactly, but they're also happy and content that someone is happy living in that property. It's not a slum. But look, let's be honest. Would you buy everything that you sell?
No, I wouldn't. And I don't mean what we sell is bad projects. I just mean it goes back to what we said at the start of, it depends what your own circumstances are. Massively on that. Myself as a young investor, my strategy is very much to leverage properties so that in 20 years time I've paid off those repayment mortgages that I've got on them, as well as having an income along the way. If I was much older than that, I'd be very different. I'd be maybe wanting a bit more of a quicker fix. maybe I'd have the time to do flip properties, that type of thing. So no, I wouldn't. But I think where we're quite good, I'm sure you guys are the same, is we have a good spread of different properties. And we've really developed that over the years. When we first started, it was very much it was a one set thing. City centre properties, that was it. Whereas we've really, branched out of it. We hated the fact that we had an investor that was coming to us wanting the property, and we didn't have something that suited their needs. So that's why we now sell the likes of HMO properties, as well as short-term let properties, student properties, everything on it. So that when we have that first chat with you as an investor, we find out what you want, and then the chances are we'll have something to put forward to it. So
does that help or hinder? Because I've found sometimes too much choice.
Yeah,
is sometimes not necessarily productive.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Especially in a world that you go online today and you type in property investment, it's a maze. Yeah, it's very difficult for people to navigate.
I suppose what I mean in terms of different options, it's more different models. So not necessarily like loads of different student property, for instance. We maybe only have one choice of it, but as long as there's a variety of rental models for people, is what we're sort of going for. But yeah, it is a good point. It can sometimes be a victim of your own success that way.
Due diligence, DD, right? Everyone talks about it, and it's almost like, oh, I've done the DD, trust me, right? Don't ask me any more questions. How far can you go? How far do you need to go, specifically in the pool of industry that we're in? And naturally, there are certain things that we can't control.
I think it's about doing the level of DD that you're capable of doing. Like, it's realistic. We're not all going to sit here and some Mr. Developers go, here, do you want this project? X amount. Yeah, thank you. We'll start selling it. No, we're all going to do due diligence. And like you said, there is stuff out of our control. But I think as a company, we want to do the due diligence to the level that we would be happy with if we were buying a property. And that's how deep we will go. We'll always push to get as much information. But on the flip side, we'll always present all of that information to the investor. So a lot of our investors do comment how quite transparent we are. Transparent just from the beginning. Like, we give them all the information we have. Here you go. Because then you're the one who's ultimately, we can advise you, we can demonstrate it to you, and we can obviously, as the investment consultants, we can tell you what's good and what works well and what the strategy is and why that's been chosen. But ultimately, you're the one going through and making that purchase. Yes, your solicitor advise you, but you need to look at the due diligence that we've got to make sure you can make the calculated decision. I don't want you going in blind. I want to make sure that you've seen everything that I've seen, so you can go, yeah, okay, based on that, I'm happy to go ahead. Not me telling you, go ahead. It's like, that's the information. So as much due diligence as possible, but also presenting it to the client so they can make an informed decision.
And once you've presented to that client, I would always suggest go away and do your own due diligence, Mr. Smith.
Exactly.
You go away and verify what I've told you, and find out what your thoughts are on X, Y, and Z. And if you're comfortable with that, then let's talk. I mean, we can only satisfy ourselves to a certain degree with what we're looking for, but things change all the time, and we can't control everything, as we've said a number of times today. So we can do as much as we possibly can. But there's always things that we haven't, there's always unforeseen things. But Mr. and Mrs. Smith have got to be comfortable themselves. They've got to take in what we've taken on board. Don't take our word for gospel. Go out and have a look yourself. Kick the bricks yourself. Understand the model. Understand the market. Understand the demographic of renters. Understand who the developer are. All these sorts of things. Go and have a look. But we're here for any help, any cross-referencing, all of that stuff we're available for. It's very difficult to, tie a bow on it and say, there you go, it's all done, right?
I think sometimes you've got to strip it back as well. Like, you guys have all seen a lot of properties that have rental guarantees or rental assurances with them. Don't just take that for gospel. Strip it back. Imagine there isn't a rental guarantee. What weekly rent, what monthly rent does that property generate you? And if that's the same as a rental guarantee, then brilliant. Because if the rental guarantee falls through with a particular developer, at least that property will generate that. So I think sometimes stripping back what you're being offered in all these fancy brochures and stuff. Just look at the bricks and mortar and what it'll produce you.
I think a big part of longevity in this business is what we'll always advise clients, which is, with all due respect, before protecting your interests, we're going to protect our own interests. I'm not going to put myself in that situation where we're taking on a dud deal. So by default, you should benefit from that, right? So that is what we talk about when we do due diligence, where we're instantly thinking, right, how do we protect our own house first? And naturally that only sort of filters through to the client.
It's also, I mean, you spoke about earlier the UK property legal system. There's technically a bit of a 3-stage process. We get the information, do the due diligence. We then pass it to the client, who then does their due diligence. And then it even goes to a solicitor who's there to back up and verify and do their own due diligence. And
add the survey on after that.
Exactly. So there is a 3-stage process. It doesn't mean when they get to the top tier that something might pop up, but at least it's going through that process. And especially the solicitor, because it is they've got the legal intention in mind, they're going to advise the client accordingly. And look, it's not great to spend a few £100s and get told, actually, this is cropped up, which nobody could have foreseen. But I've done the due diligence, and this is actually going to be a bit of an issue. Maybe you want to go ahead or you don't. But at least you haven't then put down the money. Like you just said in Dubai, you don't have that opportunity. It's like, here's the paperwork, sign it, and you'll be like, okay, thanks. And then
you've got to go in knowing that you're going to have costs.
Yeah.
You're going to have sometimes money that does sort of go down the drain, but it's for your own good.
Yeah.
And I think any sort of upside of making money, there's always a potential of losing money, but there's always cost.
Well, this is what I mentioned about one of my investors who says, look, out of every 10 units that I buy, one of them's going to cost me money.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm not going to, so you factor that in.
But 1 out of 10
well, it's
still great.
I've spent thousands in the secondary property market buying properties and then falling through. And no fault to my own, but that comes with the territory. It comes with the game. I don't sit there and go, I'm never doing this again. It's like you have to speculate to accumulate.
But isn't that why you have to have a certain amount of money to invest in
Yes,
property?
exactly.
Going back to the point about educators and stuff like that, if you haven't and you choose that one property, a bad one to start off with, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that, you have to be careful.
You don't have that contingency, you don't have that safety net, and it's your all eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Hail Mary.
Yeah.
I even have clients that will say, I've got 100 grand, help me spend it. And I'm like, whoa, is this your first investments? Yes. So don't overexpose yourself.
Yeah.
Said buy one, maybe two, but you want a buffer there, settle, and then we can reassess.
Yeah.
But don't go all at once and just sort of blow it all.
When a client comes to me and says that, I say, look, speak to Stuart. Speak to Toby. Spread the money. Right?
Spread the wealth.
You've got your crystal ball.
Yes.
What is happening with the market over the next 5 years, specifically property prices?
Property prices, honestly, the fundamentals are the fundamentals, right? We're woefully undersupplied still in this country. The population is increasing. The level of property that are being built is nowhere near meeting that. So I don't see that changing in the next 5 years. I still see that gulf, continuing to be present and affecting the house prices. Look, the Bank of England rates, that changes things. There are peaks and troughs in that, but I genuinely feel the demand is high still for the types of things that we sell, and I feel like that has got some longevity in it. And I'm, all eggs in that basket.
You're backing it.
It kind of feels like people are holding off a little bit.
There is a lot of pent-up demand.
Yeah, and that eventually will
Well, do you think they're holding off for 3.5% mortgages again?
I think some are.
Yeah.
There is that.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, once you hear in the news that it's a good time to buy property, it's too late at that point.
Well, this is it.
You've missed the boat. Do you know what I mean? You need to be a bit braver, and at the moment now, whilst interest rates are a little bit higher, what we found is our negotiations with developers are a little bit easier. We're getting prices down a little bit more. So yes, your rates might be higher, but if you're getting that property for much less, does it really matter? Because your rate's only sort of fixed for 2 to 3 years. Exactly. Once that balances itself out, you've done really well. So yeah, it just feels like there's a few holding back, and we're getting them experienced investors coming in, but for the new ones, they're holding back. And
I think I've got a very optimistic take, and it is sort of historical data and trends driven. So are you all familiar with the 18-year property cycle? Yeah. So I've been following that for a while now, and the way the market conditions are at the moment, I am leaning towards where we're in sort of the last, coming into the last phase, which is, they call it the explosive phase. Doesn't mean prices are going to shoot up, but it means a phase of elevated prices. To what degree that is, who knows? But for a long time, following that cycle, there's always a mid-cycle dip, okay? And if you think back to the last recession, When was the last time we've had a mid-cycle dip? We haven't. People thought we were having it when Brexit was announced, or when COVID hit. Oh, here's the dip. We've never actually had it, and what we're experiencing now is a bit of a correction. And you'd kind of allude to the fact that it's a bit of a dip. Now, all those factors you just spoke about, the interest rates, Bank of England, people sitting there waiting to what happened, there's not enough homes. Developers now are actually sitting on their hands as well. They're reducing what they're building. So stock levels are going to be restricted going further. So
bear in mind their cost of increase, their borrowing costs have increased as well.
So they're sitting to wait for it to get better, and then they'll build again. So okay, what does that look at? Well, we're going through a dip or a correction, shall we call it? The market's settling. So let's look at the fundamentals, the factors. There's going to be even more less supply coming up because builders aren't building. There's more people and the population is ever growing. Rates are probably going to, don't get me wrong, they're not going to drop, but lenders are going to start bringing out more favourable rates and more favourable products, and people are going to become in a position where it's more affordable for them to buy, okay, because wage will start to grow. Wages should grow. If rates do settle, I say rates, mortgage rates, and lenders start to become more competitive, and we're already seeing this in the market right now, that rates are starting to come down and products are becoming a lot better. What's going to happen? Well, more people are going to enter back in the market. Well, what happens when that happens? Well, demand shoots up, but supply is being even more restricted because we're not building enough homes. Well, what's that going to lead to? It's going to lead to price increases. So I think we're going to have a period where it's settling. We haven't had a crash like people were predicting. Shows the strength of the UK property market and what we've experienced. So I inevitably think maybe end of next year, 2025, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a nice elevated period. What that will look like, I'm not saying 10, 20%, but I think we'll start to see elevated prices. So again, my advice is I want to capitalise now while people are sitting out on the sidelines. Well, I want to come in and I want to buy now. I'm actively investing in property, and even if it was different, I still would, because I'm in it for the long term anyway. But that's my take. I think we're in the mid-cycle dip just before we start to take off.
I did a bit of content the other day that stood by my whiteboard and did
I've seen those
X,
videos.
Y, right, okay.
Good.
It's not just my mum watching it. And just basically talking about, the last time that we had a bit of a correction, or big old correction, 2008, 2007, 2008, right? For the last 12 years following that, growth, pure growth. So we're at a bit where there's a little bit of a plateau. And if, the cycles are anything to go by, we expect, another 11, 12 years of, not vertical, but some growth. And that's what the cyclical nature of the market would suggest. And all we can go by is historic data, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. So,
but if you compare it to other industries as well, like stocks and shares, shows how safe and secure property is. Yes, there's dips and stuff and peaks and troughs, but there's not like fall off a cliff type troughs as you can get.
You can never go to zero. Worst case scenario, you've got actual bricks and mortar. Break it down brick by brick. You got physical value to every single aspect of that unit. And in stocks and shares,
I'm being flagged to say, look, that's a cut. I hope the viewers have enjoyed this episode. I certainly have. And guys, I can't thank you enough. Michael, Toby, Stuart, thank you so much for jumping on Magna Meets. And I think I want to put it out there and say, look, there's got to be a round two.
Absolutely.
Can we do this again? Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think so.
Let's do that.
We didn't have enough time.
No, it doesn't seem that.
We didn't manage to slag anyone off either.
That's in round two.
Okay, fair enough.
Guys, thanks ever so much for watching. Have a great end to the year, and catch you in 2024.